Hey guys, the Patriot Desk here, giving you a video today talking about Charlie Kirk. I know it's everywhere. Um, I just find it crazy that the left wing, uh, or left, uh, is demonizing Charlie and praising that Charlie is dead, which is crazy to me. I wouldn't want anybody to die, just for having an opinion. Um, but I'm gonna basically just react to these two videos and basically just talk about it. So, without further ado,
There is no unity with people who scream at children over their parents' politics. There is no unity with someone who lies about what Charlie Kirk said in order to excuse his murder. There is no unity with someone who harasses an innocent family the day after the father of that family lost a dear friend. There is no unity with the people who celebrate Charlie Kirk's assassination. And there is no unity with the people who fund these articles, who pay the salaries of these terrorist sympathizers, who argue that Charlie Kirk, a loving husband and father, deserved a shot to the neck because he spoke words with which they disagree. Did you know that the George Soros Open Society Foundation and the Ford Foundation, the groups who funded that disgusting article justifying Charlie's death, do you know they benefit from generous tax treatment? They are literally subsidized by you and me, the American taxpayer. And how do they reward us? By setting fire to the
that's what I'm saying. We're paying for these articles that are meant to divide us, to keep us apart, and that's what these rich people want to do. The people that truly run these organizations are trying to keep us apart to distract us from the real problem. But right now, it's just crazy because you got the right and the left, and that's what we're having this argument about. I'm personally conservative. People on the left are obviously more violent. Burning down cities. Violence, threats on violence. You can see it, and it's just very apparent. Charlie Kirk just wanted to open up the debate. He wanted to have an open debate in college campuses. He wasn't doing any violence. He wasn't inciting any violence, and I just find it crazy that he got assassinated for it, and people were praising the death. They were saying that they were happy that he died. Really, for just speaking, for just words?
house built by the American family over 250 years. I am desperate for our country to be united in condemnation of the actions and the ideas that killed my friend. I want it so badly that I will tell you a difficult truth. We can only have it with people who acknowledge that political violence is unacceptable, and when we work to dismantle the institutions that promote violence and terrorism in our own country.
But well said from our VP. He's always been well spoken. He needs security on him because it's crazy. You had the assassination attempt on Trump, and then you have this assassination on Charlie Kirk. It's more or less an assassination of the idea of freedom of speech. They're trying to suppress our speech. They just had a protest or a march or movement in the UK on free speech over there because they're under attack. The United States is the last beacon of hope for the West for freedom of speech. It's just kind of crazy how we're all of a sudden being attacked on that. But I think it's more or less a good versus evil thing that's going on right now. Um, so, yep, this is the second video.
The guy you're calling a racist?
Me one thing that white people and black people have different biologically.
Don't change the question of this. Like DNA-wise, we are different.
No, we're not. That's a lie. It has been disproven. Front page of National Geographic 6 months ago. Racism created by society. Race is a social construct that I want to break out of.
Hold up. He doesn't even believe in race. The Oxford English Dictionary defines racism as prejudice based on race, or the belief.
So my beliefs are, I'm Christian. We're all equal. We're all born. God created us all the same biological features, you know, um, but biologically we're all human.
that some races are inherently superior. But if Charlie's a racist, why is he arguing race doesn't exist? If he's a white supremacist, doesn't he need race to be real? I mean, you can't be a racial supremacist while arguing racial categories are fake. And wait a sec, race has been used to justify oppressing black people for centuries. So why is the black kid defending racial categories while the white supremacist wants to destroy them? This isn't new for Charlie. He's been saying this for years. And guess what? He's right. Here's the history of race. People always noticed skin color, but it mattered about as much as hair color. Slavery existed everywhere, and it was practiced by every skin color long before race was invented. Then, European colonizers needed justification for enslaving Africans. So, in the 1600s and 1700s, they invented racial hierarchy. The most influential framework came from Johann Blumenbach, a German doctor. He created the racial categories we still use today. Then, Georges Cuvier took Blumenbach's categories and ranked them, with white on top and black on the bottom. And racists ran with it. But here's the twist. Blumenbach never intended to create racial hierarchy. He was just trying to organize observable human characteristics, kind of like classifying plants. He believed we all have identical intellectual potential. He said differences came from environment and education, not biology.
Imagine that.
And those differences could evaporate over time. He was a devout Christian who believed we were all made equal. Sound familiar? Charlie Kirk consistently argued against racial categories and got called a racist. Yes, Charlie talked about race sometimes. He knew it was made up, but we live in a racialized culture. To change a culture,
That's what I'm saying. All these politicians, they like to play, you know, black people are suppressed. Black people are, you know, they're trying to create race as a problem, as a division point. So we spark it. So there's a fight, but especially if you're Christian, we don't see race as okay. So when you're doing DEI, and then when you're giving minority groups certain different privileges, I wouldn't say privileges, but like scholarships or something, wouldn't you consider that racist? I don't know. It's just a thought. It's just like it's just not we were what God wanted. God didn't want us to be pitted against each other. That's from the devil.
you must speak its language, especially when that culture keeps race alive through affirmative action and DEI. But most people never heard him in a long form interview.
Again, I hate this racialization stuff, but it's true. Too. They force the racialization card. For the record, of course, I don't look at people in terms of skin color, but when they start categorizing me and the young men that show up to my events as toxic because they breathe, you force the race card.
I used to think Charlie was just confrontational with college kids for clicks. Then I listened to his full interviews. I realized he was fighting for hearts and minds in the battleground of ideas, and he was winning. That's why he was killed. And the tragic irony, Charlie believed in race less than many of the people calling him racist.
And that's crazy. That's crazy to me.
We know someone from 60-second clips. We mix news with entertainment and call ourselves informed. We judge strangers from echo chambers. And that's part of the tragedy. Not just that we lost Charlie, that people can't tell the difference between hate speech and speech they hate.
And that's even more crazy. And, saying a fact like a man is not a woman is a fact. Biologically, if you're born with male genitalia, you can't be a female. That's a fact. That would be left wing's point of a speech that they hate. They can't call it hate speech. because it's not hateful to say that. That's a fact. So, yeah. Lastly, I have this video from Fox News, and I'll just play it right now.
Yes, we don't need it. What is interesting here is why is only this happening on the left and not the right? That's all we need to know.
What about
There's absolutely no cognitive.
What about Melissa Hortman that we just
okay, you want to talk about Melissa Hortman? Did you know her name before it happened? None of us did. None of us were spending every single day talking about Mrs. Hortman. I never heard of her until after she died.
She doesn't matter?
Don't play that bullshit with me. You know what I'm saying is there was no demonization, amplification about that woman.
Basically, what he's saying here is that with the Democrats, forgot her name, that it was a Democrat that was killed. Nobody was really talking about that individual. Like with the assassination of Trump, there were people calling him Nazi, fascist. There were people attacking Trump, and so therefore, him as a public figure, president, and all that, uh, these people had this derangement that he was a fascist, and they actually wanted to commit a vile act. Same thing with Charlie Kirk. You know, he was a public figure causing debate. And he was a known conservative, and they aligned conservatism with you know, with fascism.
Before she died, it was a specific crime against her by somebody who knew her. The same. Now you could bring up Josh Shapiro, but then you will not bring up, for example, that was a pro-Palestine person. So don't use your what about this? The fact of the matter is the both sides argument not only doesn't fly, we don't care. We don't care about your both sides argument. That shit is dead. For one thing, there is no cognitive dissonance on our side. On your side, your beliefs do not match reality, so you're coming up with these rationalizations like, what about this or what about that? We're not doing that because we saw it happen. We saw a young, bright man assassinated, and we know who did it. We are not coming up with rationalizations. We are calm.
Yeah, because if you think about it from the standpoint of a right wing, why would somebody that aligns with the, if you think about the perspective of why would a right winger uh, shoot Charlie Kirk when the views aligned? It doesn't make sense. I know the argument can be, well, he was raised by a Republican family, uh, which I would say you don't think that anybody in his family can get radicalized. You don't think that he could have been, when he went off to college, that he can be radicalized and be told something different. My family's mostly left wing. I'm like the only Republican in my family. Um, it took me getting out of my house and looking at my own research and analyzing before I came to the conclusion that I came up with. You know, the radicalization of the left wing. There's no moderate Democrats anymore. It's mostly either far left, Republican, far right. And there is far right in this country. There are people that are deranged on the Republican Party. But more often than not, there is violence on the left wing. And it's pretty sad to see.
We are honest and we are resolute. We're not defensive. And I understand the defensiveness. I understand why people are saying, what about this and what about this? Because if you have to face the underlying fact to this, your life is going to fall apart because you're going to realize you're not the good guys. If you sat around and you defended the mutilation of children, you're not the good guys. If you sat 600, 700 cases.
That's what I'm saying. These radical leftists are, they're saying that, that they can do transgender surgeries when they're kids, before they're of age, when they're still developing. That can be that could affect them when they're older.
Cases of harassment against Republicans, and you said, but what about this? What about this? And then you see this murder after calling somebody a fascist, you realize maybe I'm not the good guy. That is a hell of a realization to deal with. So therefore, you have to grasp at rationalizations. You don't have to do that, Jessica. They do. I don't believe you're part of that group, but why the hell do you have to mimic and echo that crap to us? He was a patsy. That guy was a patsy. He was under the hypnotic spell of a direct-to-consumer nihilism, the trans cult, and you know that. If you can decide that biology is false, you can agree that murder is okay and that humanity is expendable. How?
That is exactly true. If you are deranged and you think that this guy is a threat, if Kirk was a threat to them, because obviously, you know, as a Christian, you don't believe in the transgender movement. You know, a man's born a man, a woman's born a woman. That can't change. God created us different. You can't just change what God created. Well, you can, but it's not natural, and it's not, it doesn't work. You're still a man or you're still a woman. Doesn't matter if you get mutilated.
You cannot see that alone and see that for what the evil it is without having to attach all of these other things is beyond me.
I just want to be clear, and I want to let people speak. I in no way intended at all to minimize what happened to Charlie. I was horrified by it. I have not been on the five
but
since
the two
then.
sides argument, well, it's like pig Latin to a duck.
No. All that I was saying is could we have all of the information before you just say they did this? Because that is a broad brush to paint with this. And this kid
Let's
does
have a conversation.
No.
Charlie had a conversation. He got shot.
Yeah.
Look,
I'm
sorry, Jessica. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You weren't here for a week. You came in here and it's cold. And I'm sorry, but this is a story that is immune to news cycles. It's immune to rationalizations. It's immune to bias. This thing is with us for good. And we all have to deal with that. So that means we can't live by the same arguments that you might be reading about relativism among the media. We can't deal with those stories. It doesn't matter. The media is dead to us on this story. They built this thing up. We're dealing with it. We're going to act. We don't care what the whataboutism is anymore. That shit's dead. Sorry. For the swearing as well. I apologize to the American public. I'm going to shut up for the rest of the show.
Yeah, so that was raw emotion from him. Yeah, it's kind of crazy world that we're living in, where we can't have difference of opinions without somebody killing somebody, and they can't acknowledge that, you know, mental illness, you know, because at the end of the day, this is a mental illness that's causing violence and stuff. I don't know, crazy world we live in, where we can't express our own opinions without the fear of getting attacked. That's why we can't stop talking, because that's when the violence starts. Yep. That's it for this video.